Welcome back to Nightmare Logic, the official podcast for the dark side of the Force. We're your Sith overlords, Christopher Smith,
Peter Sawyer,
and Taffeta Darling.
And today, we're in the belly of the Sarlacc with expert Ken Napzok, so he can educate us about the horrors found in the Star Wars universe. All right, guys. So, here we are. How's your week been? Anything?
The week? Good week.
Yeah.
Good week. Busy week. Had a good weekend.
Excellent.
Actually watched some shit. Got some shit done.
Yeah, I saw on Instagram. What did you watch?
the most important movie of all time.
It was. We were treated to the Frida Cinema for the Big Trouble in Little China 40th anniversary screening they had out there with James Pact and Alan. What is it? Hayworth. And who's the other guy? Gerald. I'm terrible with names, so there was a nice a mix of fans there, and it was cool to get out to Santa Ana. I hadn't been there in like a while, and I hadn't been to that part of town, even though I'd lived there for a little bit. So it was neat. It was cool. It was pretty neat to see. Because I've been, again, I've only been out here for like 7 months now, so I'm still trying to hit up like a lot of cool theaters, and this is one that I hadn't been to that I've really wanted to. And what I like about it is that, like, it is a charitable, it's a nonprofit. Like, everyone there, like, volunteers their time. Everyone who's behind the counter or in the projection room or, cleaning, whatever, it's all volunteer based. And so that's actually really kind of nice to know that it's out there. It's like it is an art house, know, but whatever. But it also shows some fun stuff.
Cool. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've been to Vidia, it's up here, but it's kind of
I have, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have like the rental, whatever, but I like that it has 2 theaters, which was kind of neat because most of the ones that I've seen out here that are older or smaller are all like 1 theater, just the one at the bottom. But this had 2, which was kind of cool.
Nice.
And it made for a fun night because they had The Thing and Big Trouble in Little China like back to back.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I realized later we probably could have stayed for The Thing, but I didn't know that. And it was already late night. But I've already done 1 double feature of John Carpenter out in Gardena, so it was fun to go out and chase John Carpenter out in Santa Ana this time.
Right on. And I think you watched what's that movie? The
Dreadful.
The Dreadful. That's what it was. Yeah.
Okay, so this came out a couple months ago, and the big thing about it is it's Sophie Turner and Kit Harington from Game of Thrones. Everyone's real excited to see them, older and on the screen and doing their thing. But it also has Patricia Gay Harden, who I fucking just love. She channels like all of her missed energy of the fucking crazy in this. It's a horror, a historical horror piece. I think my main takeaway from it is I really felt like they could have kept them from not actually like becoming a couple, and I think the story could have been different. But it almost felt like it was good pace, about a 3 out of 5. Pretty much like her Sophie Turner's character, like husband, is like off at war and gets stuck there, and then like Kit Harington comes back, and like all this weird shit starts happening, and like there's a lot of like really ominous shit, and then when you find out, I can't really say much about it without giving it away because it's like that's all there is.
Mm-hmm.
But set in medieval times, and like all this weird shit starts happening with like murders and ghosts and shit like that. So anyways,
Peter and I talked about it a couple episodes.
Oh, did you guys already see it?
No. We just talked about it. It was being released, and it just didn't have great reviews.
It there's like 2 or 3 spots where I felt like it could have cut off, and for me, like the cast is really what, piqued my interest, and I like a good historical, drama or whatever. But yeah, I think probably by the 3rd act, it could have ended like by the 2nd, and it just felt like they didn't know how to wrap it up. But in the 3rd act is when they pushed, Kit Harington and Sophie Turner to finally have their like, love scene. I was like, oh, okay, you guys, it just felt like, it was like squeezed in.
To me, that's like lazy casting. It's like we all know,
but they were really good.
Yeah.
It was good acting for what it was.
It just feels like they're trying to like, capture the like magic.
I could have done without it, it's, I get it. They were brother and sister, haha. It's like, but that's so weird to like, even try to like go into that that whole genre or whatever of the fantasy of it. But it was, it felt like the last part of it is just like, all right, now how can we squeeze them in to get naked together? So, but if you like that sort of stuff and you like Game of Thrones and you've been curious, I mean, it's really close to it if you just don't listen.
So it's a small Game of Thrones reunion then, right? Because weren't both of them on the show?
Yeah, they were both Starks. Yeah. They were big characters, and never had their own like romance on the screen. Obviously,
Right.
that was the Lannisters. But yeah, I was real curious about it, and I guess I read it was based off like some Japanese movie from 1964. What is it? Kanito Shido's 1964 Japanese horror Onibaba, which
Oh,
I'm not
interesting.
familiar with. But I want to go look that up. But this
Yeah.
is apparently inspired by that, so I do want to watch it and kind of compare now and see and be like,
I would not have gotten that from the trailer of it. But if you look up Onibaba, like I've not seen that, but that's on my list. It just looks fucking crazy
yeah,
in a really good way.
this had it definitely had the potential, but like I said, they dropped it in the third act when they were more concerned about like romance than the actual story. So, but
Romance.
yeah, I mean,
Lame.
I downloaded Shudder. I finally got Shudder because
Oh,
season
welcome.
2 is now dropped for Tales from the Crypt, and so I went back and started watching like a lot of my faves from season 2. So,
See, this is how they get you.
I mean, that's literally the only reason I have Shudder is for Tales from the Crypt now. So, yes.
Oh, they have some cool movies that you might not see otherwise.
Yeah.
You just have to kind of know what to look for.
I'm sure there's some good stuff out there, and I'm sure we'll get some recs. And you recommend some stuff too that I'll probably look for some titles on there. But yeah, mainly it's for Tales from the Crypt.
One of the things I actually watched was, I think it's Shudder. It's AMC. It was on Amazon Prime. So I think we talked about The Terror, the show that had come out a couple of years ago. And I didn't realize it was like an anthology and that every season is like different. And the first one's based on the Dan Simmons book, but the episode for the new one is called Devil in Silver, and that's based on a book by Victor Lavelle. And I thought that was pretty interesting. It was, it had some pretty wild moments. Basically, Dan Stevens is a New Yorker who is with his like girlfriend, and she already has a kid. Who's like a little kid, not a baby, and he sees the ex or the father kind of roughing them up or talking to him, and he runs over and he starts fighting them, and he gets tackled by other guys. He starts fighting them, not knowing they're cops, and then he gets thrown into this this kind of like medical ward for people who are unstable, but it's haunted, and it kind of goes from there. But yeah, it shows promise. The pilot just had dropped, so
Cool.
I figure that's very relevant. And it's directed by what is her name? She did Karen Kasama, and she's known for like Jennifer's Body and The Invitation. And Ridley Scott has been a producer of the series as well, so it's got some names.
Nice.
Chris, I'm assuming you were too underwater to watch anything.
No, actually, I watched the first 2 episodes of Widow's Bay on Apple
Nice.
TV. Yeah.
Nice.
Which I'm really digging.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
they have
yeah.
4 out so far that I'm
I'm
aware
gonna
of.
watch that today.
Yeah, it's got a really cool tone of like, well, for those who don't know, it's set in this small, presumably New England town that has for a long time had these like periods of like bad things happening, I guess. And it kind of follows the new mayor of the town who wasn't born there. He didn't grow up there. And he's trying to get the town to be a little bit more of a destination for tourists. And it's kind of the clash with the locals who believe the town is cursed. And I think he's kind of like, they don't really say in the first 2 episodes, but like has this kind of like other local who he's butting heads with who might have been the previous town mayor. Anyways, the point is that it's like something's unfolding. We don't know exactly what yet, and it seems like something bad's about to happen. And the tone is really great. It's like manages to walk a nice balance between scary or spooky at least and comedy. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Right on. I had not heard of that, so that's certainly new to me.
Yeah, well, Apple TV is not known for horror. They're more of a sci-fi
Very
platform.
sci-fi, very indie stuff. Although they've got some good horror stuff. What is it that's on there? I guess Asylum's still more sci-fi, but they had some pretty.
Yeah, they got some like
artists.
kind of darker sci-fi.
Some thrillers. Yeah, I guess more thrillers and chillers.
Yeah.
But I have been curious about Widow's Bay because I'm a huge fan of Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass.
Mm-hmm. It's got
which
it's
also-
similar
It's got that Lovecraftian
vibe, I
weird
guess.
vibe.
Yeah.
It seems like it's got a bit of a Salem's Lot thing. If we can trace that back to Stephen
Yeah.
King.
I mean, the
I've been
writing's
curious about that.
obviously different than Flanagan's like
Yeah.
way he does it, but the setting is like reminding me of Midnight Mass for sure.
That's cool.
We'll have to catch up on that.
Did either of you guys watch anything else? I do have one other thing I meant to mention.
No, I didn't see anything else.
Well, hopefully this week you'll get around to more stuff if you have more time. I also was able to catch Ready or Not 2, which I really like, is called Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. Thought that was clever. And it's the Radio Silence guys again, which is the duo. It's Matt Bettinelli, Olpin, and Tyler Gillette. And it takes place immediately after the first one, where Samara Weaving's character has just kind of survived this chaotic situation, and it turns out the first family's dead. Obviously, spoiler if you've not seen that, but
I hadn't seen it.
They were part of a bigger satanic council of families who now have to take turn. They're all going to hunt her to gain power.
Wow.
So it features her and her sister trying to survive this situation, and Sarah Michelle Gellar is in it, Elijah Wood, and even David Cronenberg. And Catherine Newton plays Weaving's younger sister. And I was pretty stoked to see Sean Hatose, I think that's how you say his name, pop up. He was Stan in The Faculty, and I don't think I've seen him in anything since. So you had him and Elijah Wood from The Faculty.
Yeah, I was about to say, it feels like a early 2000s reunion, you know?
Oh, yeah.
That cast.
A little bit. And it's if you like the first one, I think you'd like this. It's gory. It's got, the same kind of things going on. It's kind of like the movie I mentioned last time, which was They're Gonna Kill You. I think that's what it was called. But like all these movies are kind of like stem from The Most Dangerous Game in different ways. And that's more of an observation than a criticism. But also it's like you have these kind of horror comedies with gore that don't really have the horror tone. They're more like they lean on being fun and comedic, I guess. But I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I was listening to the most recent Colors of the Night podcast, and they brought up a point similar to you, which is like either horror comedies are more comedy than horror or more horror than comedy. And it's hard to find that sort of sweet spot, which is actually, like you are saying about that, is kind of how Widow's Bay is. I thought they
do a good job of it.
Yeah.
I think you just have to have scares. Like if you're going to do a horror comedy, have scary moments. Don't just have like suspense, but like make things actually kind of frightening in the way that horror movies should be.
Right.
And a lot of them don't have like, I guess that it's not really in the DNA of what the story they're trying to tell or something, but
right. Right.
But it was entertaining, and I did like it. But just go in knowing it's like, okay, it's more of a comedy with blood than straight up horror.
Right. Right. Cool. Right on. Well, let's jump into the news. What do you guys think? So apparently the first reactions for The Backrooms has hit social media, and apparently they're all really, it seems to be well received so far. And for those who don't know, The Backrooms is a film dropping on May 29th. It's directed by and written by Kane Parsons. And it started as like kind of a series of YouTube films. But it's, so far, really positive reactions. Pretty stoked to see it. All right. So also, apparently A Quiet Place Part 3 has started filming.
Wait, I thought there were three. Isn't there three of them?
There's three, yeah.
Nah, there's two.
There's a third one though.
I think that might have been like a prequel or something.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that for a fact. I'm just pulling that out of my
I've
ass,
seen
but-
it. It's the one with Cillian
I've seen all the
Murphy.
ones that have come out that are tied to that name or something like that.
Right. You'll be pleased to know that Cillian Murphy's also going to be in this one, along with Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons, Noah Jupe, Jack O'Connell, Katie O'Brien. Pretty good cast, but a lot of them were in the prior ones. I only saw the first one. Did you guys like the sequels?
The second one I liked because we got a little bit more of like what the hell happened sort of thing, and I appreciated that. I felt like the third one, I don't even remember the third one. Like I remember kind of the cast, and I know I watched it because I had enjoyed the first two, but I don't think I could really even tell you what happens at the end of the third one. So I'll have to catch up.
I thought the third one was kind of cool because it starts in like inner city. I think it's New York City where the shit's hitting the fan, and so they have the budget to kind of justify showing that. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see because of course the city's like crazy loud, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
aliens.
So
Yeah.
what you guys are calling the third one, it is a prequel, according to this. So technically this is part 3. And then the
I
third
see.
one was a prequel.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Which explains why it's in New York, because it's like it's called Day One, so it's like
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I just it's like some movies. I guess when you watch a lot of movies, modern movies, so many of them are sort of digestible because you just watch it and you're like that was cool, and then like it could be
Yeah,
decent,
yeah.
but like a year or two later, you're like, yeah, I've seen that, but I can't. It's kind of like what Taffet is saying.
I think the first one really left the impact. Sorry.
it's like prequel, not prequel. So many films are like it's the sequel, but it takes place at a different time period, or it's like a completely different cast and they're just part of the same universe. Like it's so hard to define what's like truly a sequel these days. So apparently Peacock has set a release date for the Friday the 13th prequel series, Crystal Lake, speaking of prequels, and that's going to be on October 15th. And so for those who don't know, Crystal Lake tells the origin story of the Voorhees family, and it kind of leads up to the birth of Jason, the slasher. So, but I think it primarily kind of like focuses on the residents of the town that the sleepaway camp that he famously goes and murders everyone at. So curious to see how that is. It's the showrunner's Brad Kane, who also did like Welcome to Derry. And I imagine it'll probably have a similar vibe, but I'm not entirely sure.
I just Linda Cardellini's in it, right?
Yeah, she's I think the star. Yeah,
she's great. So I'm interested in see. I think she's Pamela Voorhees, if I'm not mistaken. Jason's mom.
Cool.
So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and Brad Kane also did Tokyo Vice, which is not horror in any way, but like I love that show. It's so good. And if you haven't checked it out, it's like set in Japan in the 90s about like a reporter basically reporting on and kind of infiltrating the Yakuza. And it's just it's done by Michael Mann. It's so good. It's so beautiful. Love that.
How old is that?
Not too old. A couple years ago. It's on HBO. Great. The next story, apparently Ryan Coogler's X-Files reboot. They've announced some key guest stars, including Amy Madigan of Weapons fame. So that's pretty exciting, along with Steve Buscemi, who's like one of my personal favorite actors. Ben Foster, Deveray Jacobs, Lachlan Monroe, Tantu Cardinal, who I'm not familiar with, but was in The Last Manhunt and Legends of the Fall, which my high school self really loved that movie. So that's cool.
Nice.
So yeah, so it's going to be, I don't know, it's sounding like it's going to be a good series. I'm looking forward to seeing the reboot.
I'm just excited that Amy Madigan's going to get some more roles. I love that for her. Like,
Yeah.
that's great.
I have a feeling we're going to see her in a lot of things in the coming years.
Yeah, because she had kind of been off the grid, I feel like,
For a
prior to
bit.
this. Because I don't remember
Yeah.
the last thing I saw her in prior to Weapons.
Totally.
I'm sure there was something that I'm forgetting, but sometimes you just don't see actors for a while and they appear in something. You're like, oh yeah, that person.
Totally.
For me, it was Uncle Buck. Like, as soon as I saw the trailers of Weapons, I was like, it's Shanice. And that was just, I was like, I'm stoked. I just thought she was like the coolest lady in my day. Like, she was like the coolest female in the John Hughes universe back in the day.
Yeah.
And she was Field of Dreams, right? Wasn't she in that as well?
She is. Yeah,
I think
yeah,
so.
yeah.
The wife,
She's
right?
The wife, yeah.
Yeah. And there's plenty of movies she's been in, but it's just like, yeah, Uncle Buck and that are the
To
two.
me, it's the nostalgia of the 80s.
Totally. And what's great is everybody, all the other actors and actresses seem to love her, which is great. Like it seems like everybody wants to see her do well. So that's cool. Great. And then this last story here, I chose for you, Taffeta. You're probably already familiar, but apparently Batman Nightfall Part 1
Yes.
will premiere at Warner Brothers Industry Showcase coming up soon.
Yeah, no, I'm stoked. Yeah. And that was actually something I was going to bring up. So good for you, because I totally forgot about that. But yeah, we get a little bit of the more dark side of Batman. So
Totally.
I'm stoked for that.
Is that live action?
Yeah, well, so for those who don't know at home, and also Peter, apparently, Batman Nightfall is a 3-part animated series, and each part is a feature film length. And it's based on iconic 1993-94 Batman story arc, which, Taffeta, I should just let you explain it because
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You got
understand.
This.
Okay.
You got this. Go.
It's a Batman story arc that focuses on Bane, who releases all of the, I guess, other criminals and things from the insane asylum, the Arkham insane asylum. And according to Dread Central, it adapts the classic Nightfall storyline, which Gotham City faces escalating chaos after the ruthless villain Bane orchestrates a campaign to physically and psychologically exhaust Batman before confronting him directly. And as Batman struggles to contain a citywide crime wave and mounting threats from Arkham's escaped criminals, Bane seeks to prove himself the superior force by breaking Gotham's protector, both mentally and physically, forcing Bruce Wayne to confront the limits of his endurance, his mission, and what it truly means to be Batman. Also, apparently, the inspiration for the Dark Knight trilogy. So,
a little bit of that, yes. This is like the main story where like Bane actually broke Batman's back.
I remember that.
And like, and you see a little bit of it in like the movies that we got from Nolan. There's kind of a moment whenever like, he tries to slam him and stuff. And but yeah, it's a pretty
Taffeta question, a Batman question. Has he ever died in the comics?
Yeah.
He
comes back. He come back.
Well, that's it got me thinking. It's like you can kill superheroes in comics and it's all good because then you can have another storyline where you just ignore that, right? Like
Essentially, yeah. I mean, like whenever you do like the Batman, you've got in his time to Ra's al Ghul, then you've got like his little like hot pot where like he can put you down in there and like raise you back up from the dead, but you always come back kind of like messed up, very similar to like Pet Cemetery. There's something not quite right, and he's done that plenty of times to Bruce and to his kids and to his own daughter. So Ra's al Ghul is pretty hardcore and is his own necromancy, if you will. But yeah, the Nightfall is a very strong story for Batman fans because that was the first time that we did see Bruce, crumble, and he had to like step back and had to let other people help him because he literally had his back broken. So it's pretty hardcore. I can't wait to see it. I'm stoked.
Cool. Well, a good an indication that it's going to be good is the fact that it's like front center at their industry showcase. So like they obviously have a lot of faith in it doing well.
Yeah, they announced it, I think, last year, maybe the year before that. And DC really does have a great animation team. Like all the DC movies are some of my favorite DC movies, regardless of it being like, animated or whatever. But yeah, their animation team is pretty legit. So I love everything they put out except for some of the Elseworld stuff. But for the most part, I'm stoked.
Great. Well, so that is Batman Nightfall Part 1, and it's written by Jeremy Adams and directed by Jeff Wammaster, who has done a number of other sort of superhero and animated projects. So,
fun story. Remember when we went to horror trivia, Peter, and they were like, "Hey, does anyone need an extra person on their team, particularly like a horror writer that's in town for blah blah blah?" That was Jeremy Adams, the writer of this movie, and he's he's writing some other stuff. But I just thought that was funny.
You pointed him out. Now
yeah, because they had said that they're like, "Hey, does anyone need someone?" And I was like, "I wonder who it is." Anyways, just circle back around that Jeremy Adams is going to be writing that. So
see, that's what's great about LA is you just any random night at the horror trivia, someone like Jeremy Adams shows up.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for my news. Do you guys have anything you want to share?
I have a sort of funny story based on something I saw on Instagram last night. I guess like the Netflix is a joke. Patton Oswalt, I think that's what it's from. He was bringing up the point, and this was like to set up a punchline, but he's like, all your favorite movies are directed by men and they're edited by women. And I'm always like Mr. Contrary. And so I was like, really? So I of course, the first person I look up is John Carpenter. All dudes edited his stuff. So then I move on to George Romero. Dudes edited his stuff. But like everyone else that he posted or you can think of does have female editors, which is pretty interesting. I did not know that. But
yeah, there's a lot of female editors. As an editor myself, I definitely have noticed that too. But I don't know. There's a lot of male editors too. So I'm not sure.
Oh, of course there is. It's just I was like, he's like your favorite movies. I'm like, well, John Carpenter's my guy. So let's see if there's truth.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? But I was not about to post that on there and get eaten alive.
Cool. All right. Well, Taffeta, do you got anything you want to, any breaking news?
No breaking news. That's I'm still here.
Great. All right. Well, we did go a little long on the news, but there are actually not very many releases this week. So jumping into releases, I really am just going to talk about one, and it's one we all already know about. And this is for the weekend of May 15th. And that, I mean, there are, other releases, but in the sort of horror genre world, the only one worth mentioning is Obsession, which I'm sure everybody's already got on their calendars, and we've talked about probably in every episode for the last month or two. And that's written and directed by Curry Baker and stars Michael Johnston, Indy Navarrete, and Cooper Tomlinson. And it's about after breaking the mysterious One Wish Willow to win the crush's heart, a hopeless romantic finds himself getting exactly what he asked for, but soon discovers that some desires come at a dark, sinister price. And, everybody seems to love this movie. I still haven't heard anything much bad about it, but I don't know, Peter or Taffet, have you heard anything?
Nothing bad about it.
Yeah, it seems to have a pretty a lot of love. A lot of people seem to be really, really into it.
Yeah.
I don't want to get my hopes up, but I think it's probably pretty good.
Should we all have like
that instinct?
Like Nightmare Logic, a Nightmare Crew field trip to the premiere?
Yes.
Yeah, should we go see it?
Well, I think I'm going to be in Maine when it comes out, so I might see it.
Yeah.
When I'm out of town.
Your annual pilgrimage to Derry.
Visit Stephen King.
Yeah.
Go to the Pet Cemetery.
There you go. Yeah. So I even checked, to see what was coming out on streaming, and honestly, it's just a very quiet part of the month. But at the end of the month, we're getting a ton of like really awesome films and releases. So pretty stoked about that. All right. Well, that brings us to our main section of the day, where we are going to talk with somebody that Taffeta knows very well.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I figured it's Star Wars month, with it being the releases of all the movies, and it's got the May the 4th be with you, May the Revenge of the 5th and 6th, and then of course with the release of The Mandalorian and Grogu at the end of the month. I thought it'd be fun to have the person I know who is the most educated in Star Wars lore, like inside and out, which is Ken Napzok. So he's got a podcast, one of the longest podcasts on Star Wars. So yeah, I'm stoked to bring him on and chat with him about Star Wars and the evil and the dark sides and horrors of it.
So a little bit of movie magic. We actually recorded this interview yesterday, so be prepared for us to be wearing different shirts if you're watching this on YouTube. But yeah, let's have a nice chat with Ken.
All right, joining us is Ken Napzok, author of the book Why We Love Star Wars: The Great Moments That Built a Galaxy Far, Far Away. He's co-host of the ForceCenter podcast and hosts and produces Casterly Talk. Did I say that right? Casterly Talk? All right. Along with his own podcast feed that he does, the Napzok Network, featuring the Blathering Live, the Blathering Conversations. He's also a DJ at the Hall of Fame Music Radio, which I find fascinating. And he's also a former producer and host for Screen Junkies and Colliders. So welcome to Nightmare Logic. Hello.
Wait, also a stand-up comedian, right?
On the weekend. Yeah. All the time.
Totally left there. And he's also a stand-up comedian, which is perfect because you have a show coming up at the end of the month. So welcome. Hello.
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here. I'm a little scared because if we're talking about horror, I get a little frightened.
So you mentioned you're not really into horror, which is great because I don't really know a lot about Star Wars, which has been part of the charm of getting to know you. So I thought it would be neat to not only kind of give some people who really aren't Star Wars fans or don't know much about Star Wars, but they're into horror, maybe some point of views in the Star Wars universe that might connect us. And also talk about some of the other cool stuff you do as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not that I don't appreciate the genre. I think it's actually a really important genre, especially in an age where free speech and expression is seemingly under attack. That horror has always had an important place in getting the right stories out for the people that often don't get a chance to tell their stories. But it's also really scary. And I grew up around the street, around the corner from Elm Street in my hometown in the 80s. So it all seemed too real to me.
Cool. Yeah. And horror, I was thinking about this the other day, that even in the first trilogy, it is actually pretty horrific. I think just because the fact that I grew up with it, and we probably all grew up, saw it at such an early age, I definitely related it to it more from the heroism aspect. But really, when you think about it, I mean, in the first episode, they literally kill a whole planet. That's genocide on a massive scale. So it really does seem like it's kind of woven throughout the whole series.
Yeah, absolutely. Star Wars is definitely a multi-genre built franchise. George has always been pretty open about that, and I think the biggest are the Saturday morning serials, Kurosawa films, stuff like that, westerns. But I think all the way through is horror as well. And again, I keep making jokes. I was a scared little kid, but at 7, seeing Return of the Jedi in the theater, the Rancor monster eating the Gamorrean guard and Luke fighting him, that kept me up for weeks. It wasn't until I learned that it was a puppet that I was allowed myself to go back and see it. The Emperor has horror elements in him as well, from both Return of the Jedi all the way up to one of my favorite horror sequences in Star Wars is the opening of Rise of Skywalker, which is pure horror designed to be so. So yeah, I think it's all there. It's all in interwoven in the DNA.
What's the Rise of Skywalker opening? I've forgotten that. What is the horror of that? My brain is gone.
It begins with Kylo Ren going to Mustafar to track down a Jedi Wayfinder as he's trying to find Palpatine, the return of Palpatine, and it starts there, and then he travels to Exegol, which is literally just whereas Mustafar is a hellish planet full of lava. Exegol is kind of the pit of despair, so to speak, and going into the depths of Hades. As he descends down into it, there's this lightning strike. There's this necromancy kind of at play. There's Palpatine returning with bony fingers, and it's all designed intentionally to be a little horror short at the beginning of the film. So, you got clones, you got a lot of things like that.
You threw in necromancy, and I'm sold. I was like, I have to go watch that again. I don't remember that part.
Yeah.
Ken, would you say that what you found to be the most horrific thing it was for you was Return of the Jedi, the sequence you're talking about?
I think so. Yeah, I think the opening of that film, when I say the opening Return of the Jedi, it's almost a short film in front of the rest of the film, which is the Jabba's palace sequence. Again, I'm a scaredy cat little kid, probably still am, but it is celebrating the monsters. It is celebrating the macabre. It is celebrating, this slug-like master above it all that's sending people down to his monster and his menagerie of creatures to eat them. And the Rancor monster just, again, scared the little poop out of this kid. But also, there's a sequence of 3PO and R2 being sent down the hallway, and there's arms and tentacles coming out. You go into a droid torture chamber with EV-99, and there's a droid being killed and electrocuted. There's a gonk droid whose feet's being burned, and it's just that got me just as much as the Rancor. It's the entire sequence. It's just monsters and ghouls.
God, yeah, no, you bring up a good point. It seems like Star Wars does kind of soft launch horror for kids in a lot of ways that you don't necessarily think about, but if you dissect it, it sort of does. For myself, I was thinking about this. I was like, what was the most horrific thing I've seen in anything Star Wars? And I came to the Ewok adventure where the kid falls in the water and the surface becomes a barrier. Because he's going to drown, right? And then the Ewoks are all trying to figure it out until they have the magic stick. But I was like, that stuck with me. That's the only thing I can remember from that.
Yeah, the Ewok movies, Battlefront, Endor, Caravan of Courage, the first one has the Gorax, which is a supersized kind of monster that's on the planet. That terrified me as well. Giant monsters is apparently what got me as a kid, right? Gorax and more.
Yeah. What's interesting, and I think maybe we're kind of touching on this from a bunch of different angles, is that there's a way in which, at least definitely in the films and cartoons, like the more visual parts of the franchise, where they balance all these horror elements, but it's still family friendly. And I wonder, do you think that's something that George Lucas introduced, and that's kind of part of the DNA of the franchise? Or is it what's your take on that? And why is it that we can all be watching these horror movies then not even realize that they're horror movies, George is famously on record as saying Star Wars is for 12-year-olds. That often gets
pulled in different directions by people trying to make different kind of cases for or against Star Wars. But he's always saying it's for 12-year-olds, meaning you're on the cusp of adulthood, and I want to give you morality tales to take you in. But I think along the way, he stops off on many genres and plays with them. Not just him, obviously, the people that have continued to make them, or even the people around him back in the 80s and the prequels. So I think absolutely, I think it's I don't want to say it's an introduction to film, but it's an introduction to narrative and the importance of art and narrative storytelling, which is why Lucas is opening up a museum that's not a Star Wars museum. It is a museum of narrative art. He's very interested in that. And I think if he could introduce that to kids at a young age, and people would say, hey, I liked horror because of this, or I like Westerns because of this, I think he'd be proud in that. And again, there's so many lessons and everything to be found in the monsters and the ghouls and the Sarlacc pit in the middle of the dunes, and you get tossed into it. I think absolutely. He's a film fan first.
Right. And does that hold true across the different, I guess, formats? Like I read a few of the novels when I was younger. I don't remember much about them, but like, are the novels similarly kind of geared towards, a younger audience on that verge of becoming an adult, or are they full on adult or like young adult? Like how does that work? There's
a lot of, especially in the publishing side, there's middle grade, there's YA, the young adult stuff. And some of the best Star Wars books, even in this modern era, are considered YA. And I always tell people, don't overlook it because you think you're not 13 anymore. I also think so many people miss the lessons, whether it's in the 80s, 90s, or beyond, that we're all still 12-year-olds learning how to be adults. And maybe there's some lessons for us to be found in there. But on the publishing side, they lean into it more in Legends, which I'm not as much of an expert as Legends as others are, which is the books and comics and stuff prior to April 2014, which are now not canon. They're Legends, but there's Death Troopers, Red Harvest, which were straight up horror stories. We got some coming in the modern age. Kirsten White's got a book coming out. I wrote it down here because I was going to Hiding from the Dark, a Star Wars horror story, which is a middle grade reader. In the comics in 2017, Jason Aaron and Kieran Gillen wrote The Screaming Citadel, which was a 5-issue crossover with the main Star Wars line at the time. That is pure horror. It is vampires. It is possession. It is a screaming citadel stuff, and it's dripping with horror themes all the way through it. So, as far as the age, I think it can vary depending on what they're trying to get to in terms of just the marketing of it. But I think it's all, the through line is all there. It is a morality tale. How can you use all the pieces to get that across.
Right, and traditional fairy tales were essentially horror stories, right? Like there is horror and there needs to be in a morality tale because you have to have moral dilemmas, and the stakes have to be high, and there has to be real consequences for actions and things.
Hansel and Gretel still scares the crap out of me. What are we doing?
All the Brothers Grimm stuff, all that stuff. I mean, The Little Mermaid's a terrible horror story. They had those ones that came in that were doing the indie movies that were trying to do like the Little Mermaid tale and like the Cinderella stuff that was more along the lines of like the horror stories. So even fairy tales, even the most fantasy stuff is rooted in evil and horror.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point, Taffeta. I think like evil has to be scary, right, to drive the point home of why it's such a threat.
Totally.
I don't know. There's something about Tim Curry that was darkness, and that just isn't. It didn't scare me.
Well, what's interesting to me also about when I started researching for this episode is in really thinking about all the different types of kind of horror that are woven into Star Wars too, because it's not just, bad people per se, but there's like kind of creature horror. There's like occult horror kind of in some orders of the Jedi and things like that. Right. And like, so it really kind of leans into these different sort of subgenres of horror as well. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the best examples of that is the Clone Wars animated series from about 2008 to 2014, and then came back for season 7, whatever it is. They had a ton of fun, and George was at the helm of that, even though Dave Filoni is the man who gets the credit for driving that show, and he was, along with Henry Gilroy and other great writers and producers. But George was behind it all, and they really leaned to what we were talking earlier. So I like that you bring up there's other genres. The monster side of it, there is the Clone Wars arc, season 2, around episode 8 is the Brain Invaders one. They're on Geonosis. and there's actual clones with worms going into their brains, and
Wow.
it's horrific. And then later on in that season, they lean completely into monster movie with Godzilla, with this character called the Zillo Beast, which is this giant Godzilla-like creature that in the Clone Wars, the Jedi and the Republic and the Separatists unearth it in the Battle of Malastare, and it's taken back. Palpatine wants to study it, and it breaks free and terrorizes Coruscant. And there's this whole large, episode-long sequence of this monster that they unearth. It wasn't bothering anybody. War unearthed this monster, destroyed the citizens and the planet Coruscant a little, or this parts of Coruscant a little bit. And the creature comes back in the Bad Batch series, cloned and dangerous. So yeah, I love when they lean into that unapologetically, just straightforward. Brain Invaders is just straight 1950s sci-fi with worms going into brains. It's pretty fantastic.
I want to know more about that. That reminds me of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So I want to. Is that something that I could read or watch separately without knowing anything else about the Star Wars stuff?
Yeah. Clone Wars season 2 Brain Invaders. Yeah, I think it's a 2-episode arc, and it's it stands apart from a lot of the other episodes around it. It's just straight up. We're doing horror. We're doing horror. There's a brain. There's a worm going into brains.
Exactly.
So
Love
cool.
it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Is there a particular series, like comic book series, miniseries, whatever, or books or whatever that leans the most horror that you're like, for a fan of horror first that comes to Star Wars second, or is just getting to know Star Wars? What would you recommend that they start if they want that part of it?
Yeah, starting in 2018, IDW put out a series of stories and anthologies. I think there are about 5 issues, and one is a one-shot by Cavan Scott, one of the great Star Wars writers, both in books and comics. And it starts with Tales from Vader's Castle. It goes Return to Vader's Castle, Shadow of Vader's Castle, Ghosts of Vader's Castle. So Vader's Castle, or Fortress Vader, which we first see in Rogue One, but had been kind of in Star Wars lore as something that Ralph McQuarrie designed in the 80s, and people kind of knew about some of this stuff, and they bring it to canon in Rogue One. Fortress Vader, built on Mustafar, overlooking the spot in which Anakin had been burned and became Darth Vader in a way, though he was actually technically Darth Vader by that point. So that series, so Cavan Scott leans into that and takes you all through. It's anthology stuff. It's all horror. It's straight up horror. And then there's George Mann wrote 2 collections of books, Star Wars Dark Tales and Star Wars Myths and Fables, all direct horror. So completely billed as it. There's ghost stories. There's all these kind of things in it. It's fun stuff.
If they were to make a Star Wars horror movie, do you think it would be pulled from that, or is it, from all your knowledge of Star Wars, what do you think would make the most sense?
I think there's long been rumors that they are, developing a Star Wars horror project, probably a TV series. Tony Gilroy kind of let that out in January 2026, and so it's possible. I think it would be not taken from those stories. It would probably be something on its own. I don't know how, if it's direct, I'm curious to see how direct they do it. But I think absolutely there's examples of Maul Shadow Lord, which is an animated series that just wrapped last week. That was new following Maul post Fall of the Republic. It has horror elements all the way through it. So if you could just expand upon that, I think that's probably the direction they'll go if it's a live action animated series or live action TV series.
Wasn't there some project? Was it the Solo film that died? But I think I read an article at some point where there was a Star Wars film that was being developed and then they canceled it. But the director of that, who was a prominent director, was going to take it more in the horror direction.
It's possible you are thinking of Guillermo del Toro.
That might be it.
Had pitched something throughout the years related to maybe to Jabba. There was, the Rise of Jabba, or there was kind of he wasn't taken from the old Tales of Jabba's Palace book, but it might have been something like that. And I think just and he had said it directly a few times. I even saw him say it to us at Collider. He was being interviewed, and off camera it was just like, I pitched this thing to Lucasfilm. And that was like 2017 range. But because of who he is, I think without a doubt, I think the thought would be like that would have been a horror film.
Yeah. I mean, he makes the most sense because he walks that line of the like fable, family friendly horror you know, in the way in his work. So that makes sense.
He's everything that the Brothers Grimm wanted in a storyteller.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And he's really good with creatures, as we all know. So,
Yeah.
God. I would watch that film for sure. 100%.
Yeah, but Doug Jones is like the master of like, you know, contortionists and creatures and stuff. Has Doug Jones done anything in Star Wars, Ken? Do you know?
Not to my knowledge, unless it's something early and uncredited that I'm unaware of. But yeah, I would love him in Star Wars doing his magic. He's great.
For you, what's your favorite horror, like creature element, like character, like the darkest thing that grabs you?
To me, it's pretty simple. It's Darth Vader. It is the tale of Anakin Skywalker. It's absolute pure horror. How you can slip into the dark side by believing their lies and thinking you're making this out of the freedom of your own choice when you're slipping into a prison. He is literally trapped in an iron lung for the rest of his life because of the deal he tried to make with the devil. And that's the tragedy of it. The great shot in Revenge of the Sith of the mask coming down onto his face. It's one of the great shots in Star Wars. And Hayden Christensen's eyes go up. It's the last time he'll see out without his. He takes the mask off, but it's the last time before the mask comes on forever. It's a great shot, and he literally goes into hell on Mustafar to a lava planet. But then you take that out. And Vader is a monster. And two of the greatest examples, they just had one in Maul Shadowlord, the animated series. I guess that's a big spoiler. I apologize, but he's there and there's no dialogue. He is literally a unrelenting monster. And I think the most famous one that people celebrate is Rogue One, the hallway scene in 2016.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a horror sequence. That is the monster at the end of the hallway. That is an unrelenting beast that cannot be stopped, and you must get past it to literally save the galaxy, get the plans out. And it's just also because I think horror teaches lessons, a lesson that I constantly say over and over again. Vader is a great character and worshipped in the fandom in some weird ways sometimes. A lot of people don't get the point, and George has even kind of come out and said that. In fact, he changed a lot of episodes 2 and 3 from maybe his original plans to be like, I understood a lot of you didn't get the point. That's why I started with him as a 9-year-old. You all worshipped him from the original trilogy. Vader is the most powerful monster in the land, and there's so many times where he stomps down the hallway, an unstoppable beast, but he never gets what he wants. If you track it all the way through the trilogy, to the trilogies and the standalone stories, this animated series, there's a ton of shots of Vader marching in, frightens everyone around him, and kills people, destroys things, but never gets the things he wants. And that, I think, is the big lesson of him. He sold his soul to never find peace and to never actually obtain the things he wants. And he's in constant conflict with himself. So it's cool. It's badass. It's Vader down the hallway. But it's a big, powerful lesson told through this monster, this horror monster that comes after everyone.
He's like a walking hack and slash character. That's all he does. He just kills.
It's a lot like Jason, really, if you think about it.
So yeah, someone had called the Rogue One scene Darth Vader's slasher moment. That's out of a slasher film, and I thought that was a very astute observation.
Yeah.
It's interesting looking at Darth Vader as a little kid. I was one of those people who worshipped him. I told Taffeta and Christopher when I saw Return of the Jedi in the theater, and I had to be carried out because I cried when he died. But I look at the impact of that is they made bad guys just look cool. That goes through G.I. Joe, Cobra Commander, Skeletor, you name it. All the bad guys looked way cooler than the heroes.
This is 100%. This comes up a lot on our shows and just in life. The bad guys have the cooler toys. I collected mostly Cobra. I have to admit, part of my sexual awakening might have been the Baroness, which is the top Cobra female agent. If you come to my house in little corners, I'm staring at a Baroness figure. I have a Baroness pipe. Yeah, absolutely. And for a long time, I too collected more Imperial stuff. I actually had a baseball cap that has the Imperial cog on it. And I wore it for many years, wore it on stage as a comic, wore it to conventions. And then the world changed around it. We don't need to go too much into the real world. And that symbol of the Empire started to represent something a lot different and more real for all of us. And I was in a coffee shop and someone turned to me and just looked up at my hat and just kind of rolled her eyes and went, And that's the moment I realized, oh, so I got a Rebel insignia hat now. Because it is exactly what you're saying. Now, I have on my wall here, anytime they released a Vader figure, I grabbed it.
Yeah.
The dark side, that red and black aesthetic is wonderful. It's so cool.
Well, it's a real credit to the production designers, right? I mean, those silhouettes and the sort of the way they designed the characters to look hold up in a way that a lot of times other films from the era, their bad guys didn't. And and I mean, really, there's a lot of, this isn't new information, but they based a lot of that right on sort of the Nazi outfits and things like that. So I guess we got to give credit to the Nazis, but
well, I would piggyback, and I would also say it's the voice too, like James Earl Jones, or if you're talking about Cobra Commander's voice, also Starscream, like they sounded fucking cool.
Yep.
James Earl Jones sounded so menacing with that deep voice. It was so perfect for Darth Vader.
And the confidence, right? Like particularly in the US, we really value confidence, probably to a fault. And the Rebel Alliance, they're always like, looks like they're glued together with duct tape and Elmer's glue or whatever, and and meanwhile the Imperium has it all together, and they're it's like everything's slick and like a well-oiled machine.
You make me think of Return of the Jedi when Luke Skywalker says to the Emperor, your overconfidence is your weakness, which he shoots back, your faith in your friends is yours. But yes, it's absolutely
right
cornerstone of the Empire.
Right. Plus also Emperor Palpatine's like quarters, so dope.
Yeah.
Best view ever. Like I would succumb to that just for the view alone, just because I like really good views and I like shiny things and sparkly lights, and he's got it, and I'd be like, all right, here's my soul, I got a view.
Yeah. And the electricity that comes out of his hands and stuff, that's so fucking cool. I mean, he's like a sorcerer, it's kind of like
it's a wizard. He's a wizard with a great pad. I mean, done.
Totally.
Come to the dark side. We have views. Yes.
Yeah, it's very Lovecraftian in a way too.
Was the Emperor based on anyone in history or?
Yeah. Richard Milhouse Nixon.
Really?
Yeah. Absolutely. That is that. There's probably obviously as it appears on screen and how Ian McDiarmid plays him wonderfully. I think there's a lot of other influences in the look and everything that we're talking about, but 100%. That's what George in the 70s said. And when he brought him into play in Empire, he was always present. If you read the opening of the New Hope Star Wars novelization, credited to George Lucas, but ghost written by Alan Dean Foster, there's a prologue that is all about Palpatine taking power. He's not Darth Sidious. He's not Sith. We didn't know any of that there. George didn't really know that was the case. But it is literally he held onto his power and surrounded himself with yes men. And it's this fantastic political tale. It's the first thing ever released with Star Wars that came out before the movie, and it's telling his tale. So yeah, George has always said that was his story. Was what if his fear was what if Nixon was able to get a third term when he started.
Oh wow,
he had no idea Donald Trump was coming.
No, well, I think he might have had an idea that in general someone might have been coming.
All right, fair point. What's interesting is that, Darth Vader has this redemption arc.
Yeah.
And you don't, in horror films, you don't see that with the bad guy. So that's sort of an interesting contradiction there. Or
I can give you an example where that changes.
Oh, all right.
Don't Breathe 2. Some people would say that's irresponsible, but I found it pretty fascinating because if you see those movies, you'll understand what I mean.
Yeah.
So sometimes you do, but yeah, it's usually evil for the sake of evil,
Yeah. Yeah. So I wonder, does that take the edge off a bit of the horror aspect? Or, I mean, I think it's really just good storytelling because it kind of complexifies the character. But it kind of gives him more of a central, he's no longer just a foil, right? He's kind of like a more, what's we're looking for? Protagonist kind of piece of him too.
I would say it shows, I think there's a lesson to it. It's like you can be corrupted and bad, and then you can still be good after that. You can come back from it. I think that might be what he was attempting. maybe, but it's also complicated because his kids are, Luke and whatnot, right?
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think they take the horror elements to change it up a little bit, and that was the statement of in Star Wars in particular, but I think just in life in general, there's this kind of, to me, a confusion around the word destiny, that it's preordained, and that you're chosen and you're the chosen one. But really, to me, destiny is just what brings you to your next choice, and that's your option to make. That's your choice to make the next step, and I think that was the big lesson. And again, Vader stomps down hallways to try to get what he wants, and he only gets what he wants, which is some sort of peace, when he lays that all down. In the height of the 80s, with Rocky and Rambo and everything, not picking on Stallone, but with Rocky and Rambo and all that stuff going around, George Lucas decided that the hero of the story, Luke Skywalker, would throw his lightsaber down, throw down his weapon, and give up his power, and that changes things. That leads to the decision inside Anakin for Anakin to emerge again. So I think you're right. I think there's great value in that, and that I don't know if I want Jason Voorhees to come around, but Vader can. And a lot of people, and this is maybe separate, we have so much fun. There's so many Star Wars shows and podcasts, and I'm part of it, and I've been part of that for the last 12 years. There's fun going into things on a micro level. But sometimes I think people forget that it is a morality tale. So you bring up in New Hope, the genocide of Alderaan, and people are still, there's some conversations about, well, Anakin should have been redeemed because he was part of that. And it's like, in the real world, we can have that discussion. But here, it's trying to show you're as good as your next choice.
Famously, the films were, George based them a lot on Kurosawa's work. And I'm curious if some of these horror aspects are carried over from that, or did he bring in other influences as well?
I don't know on the top of my head. I am less a film file than others. I did go to film school for a little bit. Then I decided I'd rather go into radio and play 90s rock music for everybody. But yeah, I think that's fair. He's such again, it sounds like I'm advertising for the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, which is opening very soon here in LA. Come on out, get your tickets. He is a fan of this and a fan of taking this stuff serious. There's going to be, and Taffeta could probably tell us which ones, but there's going to be comics on display there because George says, believes in something that I've always echoed, that pop culture is culture, that it should not be looked down upon, that the lessons are great, the lessons are grand. And so I think he pulls from all that stuff. Kurosawa, absolutely, Hidden Fortress and Seven Samurai and all that stuff obviously directly influenced it, as did so many other things. The nostalgia was baked into it. Flash Gordon was what George wanted to do when he couldn't get the rights or that couldn't come together. He says, nuts to that, I'm going to make my own. And he pulls forward everything as an homage and an honor to the great art before it, but also as like, we need this now in the 70s. I'm going to give this to the younger generation. These stories based on films and books and horror genres that in Western genres and everything that people love.
Right on, yeah.
It's almost like if there was just more blood that was shown in a lot of these Star Wars movies, that it would be considered more of a horror story. I think that's what it's lacking, is the lack of gore and the lack of blood, because all these terrible things are still happening. You're still slaughtering younglings, adults, monsters, but you never actually see like the aftermath of that part, what's there that actually adds to that horror element that I think a lot of the directors do when they do horror movies. Otherwise, like, it's just, I guess it's cauterized because of the fucking, like a laser or something, but I think if there was more blood, I think it'd be a little different tale or reception.
We don't see
It's a very good point.
Luke's stump, do we? We don't get like a close up of his stump. It's just kind of the sleeve.
It's just, maybe smoking a little bit, but you don't see it up close. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But in some ways, that's more effective because it's like your imagination's left to imagine what that is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I agree. And I'm trying to think. I'm trying to quickly think of things I can tell you, Taffeta, that would be full of Star Wars blood, but there is not a lot. You're right.
The only blood I can remember is when I think it was in the on Tatooine in the bar scene when he cuts the arm off and you see the arm on the ground with the blood. It's the only time and it's not even a lot, And
that's kind of the last time. Yeah, it was as if George was like, maybe we shouldn't do that going forward.
Well, I mean, and George, famously went back and made Guido shoot first. So like he clearly was not a fan of. It's interesting because there is so much horror, but then he dial it back in a way. maybe.
Yeah, he's constantly tinkering. He changed the sound of the opening weekend of Star Wars. While it was playing in Mann's Chinese Theater, he was in a booth around that time. He might have been on vacation with Spielberg, I think, the weekend it released. I can't remember the lore, but he was unhappy with the audio from the beginning. He's just a constant tinkerer of his stuff, which I know ignites a lot of debates in the fandom. But I always want to see what George has next for what he does, including the famous McClunky he added to the Greedo sequence at the very end, his last thing.
I'm not familiar with that. Is that a more recent change? Or is it...
Yes. I forget the year now. Time has no meaning post 2020. It was when, when was it? There was it was not too long ago. Maybe when when they came to Disney Plus. Someone out there in the audience is probably screaming at me to get it right. But one of the last things he did, and this had been sitting in the vaults for a bit since the sale, is in the Han and Greedo sequence, right before the laser blasts start going. Han Solo says something and Greedo just goes, McClunky. And it's like, no one really knows what it means. And I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that George is continuing to be like, yeah, one more thing.
Wait, so I totally missed that Lucas changed the who shot first situation. Could you catch me up on that?
Yeah, it is. It's big controversy, but I am generally someone who is okay with the change. But Han famously in New Hope for most of the time up to the 90s, to the 97 releases, is confronted by Greedo in Tatooine at Chalmun's Mos Eisley Cantina and shoots him because he knows he's about to kill. In 97, George did a version that's really, doesn't look great, number one, but and Greedo kind of fires first and misses, and Han kills. And then I think they adjusted it again where the blasts are kind of simultaneous. Greedo just misses it. But it's all George's big thought behind that was like he didn't want Han to come off as just this straight across cold-blooded killer. A lot of people don't agree with that. I understand what George is doing. Han is misunderstood. Han is not bad guy in that film. He never was intended to be. He's just someone who is at worst apolitical and uninvolved and trying to live this existence that he thought he was and thought that there's this character that he's always played from the beginning. So it's one of and George is famously seen wearing a Han shot first T-shirt on the set of the prequels.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, no, I had no idea. I knew that was always like a argument or a debate among Star Wars fans, but I did not realize that George was like, all right, I'm going to settle this.
And it's a very Gen X coded complaint. I get into many arguments in bars with friends when they start slagging on a lot of stuff. Generation X, which I'm right in the middle of, born in 76. Generation X, the first chance they got to destroy Star Wars for the generation behind them, they did. They tried to take it and make it theirs and tell you couldn't have, ours was the best and yours sucked. And that started in 97 with the special editions and continues to this day as I get angry in bars at friends who say things.
I'm a elder millennial and but I honestly I sided with Gen X on that for a long time. I remember seeing the special editions in the theaters and I was pretty disappointed. Wasn't there like an added, I think it was a scene that had been left out of the original version that they re-added with Han, I think, talking to Jabba, and then he like steps on his tail and then the eyes, and that bothered me so much I can't even tell you. But
it did. That's part of it. Yeah, part of the conversation.
Yeah, but I think that the thing is, like, when you grow up on something and you love it, it's like it doesn't matter what you do to it, people are going to be upset. It's a conversation far outside probably the intention of this podcast, but totally.
But it's Star Wars is nostalgia based from the beginning. Nostalgia gets thrown around as a bad word. It's not, and Star Wars is as it's much about nostalgia and speaking to people who grew up on serials, adventures from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. It is also a story about generational exchange. It is about how you protect the kids and the generation behind you, and that is on display very well in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. It's one of my favorite series because it deals with how we scar and hurt the generations behind us, and how we can do better in protecting them going forward. And I think a lot of Star Wars fans naturally just forget that. And I was 23 when Phantom Menace came out, and I too made my jokes. It's now one of my favorite Star Wars films. Jar Jar Binks is one of my favorite characters. And one of the reasons he's one of my favorite characters is he represents one of the core tenets of Star Wars, which is that everyone has a place in the story. Everyone matters. And I, in my years of podcasting, have spoken to a lot of kids or adults who were kids in 99, who were kids in 2005, who were kids when the Clone Wars came out, who were kids when Special Editions came out. And they're like, that's my Star Wars. It spoke to me. And I'm now working for NASA. I'm now a director. I'm now a dad. I'm now a mom. And that's what I'm always about that, protecting everyone's entry points into Star Wars.
No, I really respect that answer. That's great. But carrying that forward, how do you think they're doing protecting, that might not be the right word, but carrying on the Star Wars legacy in this new iteration?
I think I personally think they've done an absolute spectacular job, and I have been in the middle of it. I was on Collider Jedi Council during the mid-2000s, mid-2000 teens, which was a very heightened era of debate and culture wars that Star Wars was pulled into. So you're going to see a lot of things. My podcast partners, Jennifer Land and Joseph Scrimshaw, our approach is to engage with the art that's presented to you. So many people, because it's fun, so many people go into Star Wars stories with expectations and predictions and thoughts of things that should happen. And when it doesn't, we have now grab a phone, grab a social media app and start yelling your grumpiness about it, which I understand. Sometimes it doesn't go your way. But when you engage with the art that's presented to you and you find what's there, you'll find that all these new stories at their heart are just completely aligned with what George put out there. And George has changed the way he approached things and everything, but he always had these core tenets. And when things don't work, that's why they're pulled back. Episode 9, the Colin Trevorrow episode, there's a lot of reasons that we don't know why he got pulled, but one of the reasons was his story was wrong about how he dealt with light and dark. And he wouldn't budge off that, according to some of the lore and legends around it. And they were like, that's not how it's presented. It's not. There's guide rails not in story, but there's guide rails in how you present the story. So Last Jedi is a movie that deconstructs everything that Star Wars was and rebuilds it back up to say, yes, we do need this. We do need a hero. We do need everyone involved. We do need to find your place in the story. I will die on the hill that Rise of Skywalker with Chris Terrio's work is connected so much to the heart of what Lucas put out there. It answers the questions around Princess Leia being the other one. There's two. There's Luke and Leia. That film pays that off in this wonderful way. It's also a great story about people rising up and fighting an evil that is persistent. So there's a lot of great things that I think never stray too far what George put out there. George himself can famously be grumpy. He wants to do something new. Force Awakens was a soft reboot without a doubt, but I think it nailed it in a lot of ways. George thought it was a little too similar to what he did, and I think that's a fair complaint. It's also a corporately run IP, and some of the meddling from Disney and Uncle Bob Iger and all that stuff, I think has affected it or the fans' perceptions of it. But I think when you engage with the art presented to you, it is completely in line with what George started.
I thought Rogue One was just one of the best movies. I haven't seen, admittedly, I haven't seen like every new thing that's come out recently, but like I loved Rogue One, and I particularly loved how it ended like everybody dies. No, sorry, spoiler alert, major spoiler there. But like that's totally. But like that's like something that we don't see a lot in cinema in general, and it kind of threw me back to Empire Strikes Back, and which as they say in Clerks, ended on such a down note.
But that's also that's generally considered the best Star Wars, is it not? Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I think it's the most complete film of them all. It was shot beautifully and set the tone, even though New Hope set a lot of the aesthetic. How you shoot Star Wars, how you shoot Darth Vader was kind of set in Empire, and Irving Kershner, the director, had different elements to work with. He had the big battle in the beginning that the good guys got their asses kicked. And it was just forced to be not only the darkest of the trilogy, but forced to be the most character driven. And I think that's probably what carries the day in the film discussion.
Right. Which I always like when you look at a lot of things that have become big franchises, and you look at their very first work in that, they usually have like a low budget, and they are forced for it to be more character driven, and they're almost always the best films. You know, like, I mean, Stranger Things, the first season is like probably the best season, and it's because lower budget, more character driven, because you get more invested with characters than you do with the battle sequence, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that we've been talking for a while here.
I mean, there's a reason why you wrote a book about Star Wars and all its greatest moments, and you clearly have a deep knowledge of everything. So thank you for educating us and anyone else who didn't know all this stuff as well.
I'll talk.
I have a question for you, and I'm going to give you some context for this to think about it. So I decided to watch the original Indiana Jones trilogy in chronological order, which means Temple of Doom takes place before, what's the first one? Raiders. And then third would be Last Crusade. And I've always loved Temple of Doom because, A, it's the darkest, but it's also what I would say is the most entertaining. And so I watched that first, then I watched Raiders, then I watched Last Crusade. And what I noticed is I was like, they shot Raiders first, but if you look at Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones has so much more flavor as a character. He's got more jokes. He's more entertaining. And you notice that in Last Crusade as well. But then when you watch Raiders in between them, he's kind of a bit more flat and more like straightforward. Now, with that in mind, have you like watched the Star Wars in certain orders and like noticed anything like that jumped out at you that probably otherwise wouldn't have?
No. And I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan. It's my favorite cinematic character. So I love that stuff. Could talk for a long time on that too. And Temple of Doom being one that's pure horror that terrified me. I think I'm the reason that things that PG-13 existed in my head, because I think my mom wrote some very stern letters about the heart sequence and her little Kenny.
Don't scare baby kid.
Do not scare my child.
It was the monkey brain for me, though. That was
yes, snake surprise. And I got so much to say about that movie and how it's a movie that talks about Western and American decadence, and everything is about the West not acknowledging or paying attention to other cultures. And Temple of Doom has some of the more problematic white savior trope stuff that people talk about, and I don't disagree with that, but I think a lot of people miss the point of what that film's trying to say about American and Western views on other cultures. But as far as Star Wars release, it's so hard because I'm always going to watch probably in release order. On our podcast series we're doing, and leading up to Mandalorian and Grogu, we're doing our favorite moments, favorite scenes from each movie, and we went episode 1 and we're doing release order. It doesn't change for me. I will get grumpy if people suggest the machete order, which is something that cuts out Phantom Menace and says it has nothing to do with the story. It has everything to do with the story. So I don't play around with those things. I don't play around with fan edits. The Tobey Maguire famous fan edit. I don't. But in terms of release order, it is tough. It is because I am Generation X 80s kid. So if I'm going to be like, hey, where does Star Wars start? It starts with Episode 4, New Hope, 1977.
Right.
But in terms of your observation of the Raider stuff is fascinating because, it was presented differently, right?
Yeah.
Not that I don't think it downgraded. And Last Crusade's like my favorite because that's the first one I remember seeing in the theater. Well, Temple of Doom, but that's the first one I like as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old went and saw Last Crusade, and I love it. And a lot of people think Spielberg just kind of reviews some of the stuff. Maybe. I don't know. It's goddamn fun.
That's my favorite one, to be honest.
A lot of people actually prefer Last Crusade. But what I'll say is I think because they established him in Raiders, then when they're doing like a darker one, they're like, we need levity. And that's probably where the humor comes. And then they took that element and put that in Last Crusade, right?
Yep.
So that's why it was struck me as very odd the way Raiders jumped out. I mean, fantastic film, obviously, but I was just like, it's a different indie.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Cool. Well, is there anything that you're working on right now or you're excited to talk about and share with our listeners?
In terms of, shows every week, about 3 or 4 episodes a week, we do ForceCenter, which is with me, Joseph Scrimshaw, and Jennifer Landa. As a celebration of Star Wars. As you can tell, I'm pretty positive about all the stuff. That doesn't mean we don't criticize or have things that are liked more than others. But like we approach it thematically. The example I always give of ForceCenter, if anyone's even likes anything I've said in this episode today and isn't yelling at me because of some of my opinions. We famously have a 2-hour episode breaking down what we feel is the most important scene of the prequels, which is the Dexter's diner sequence in Attack of the Clones that a lot of people make fun of. You got Dexter, it's a 1950s diner. We think that is literally the heart of George Lucas's prequel trilogy. We spent 2 hours breaking it down thematically. If you like that, come hang out with ForceCenter and do that. And I got my own stuff. And then, Tap mentioned up top, if you're local in Southern California or to Hollywood, Burbank Valley area on May 24th, the weekend of Mandalorian Grogu's release, we're doing a Star Wars and pop culture theme, but mostly Star Wars themed comedy show at Flappers in Burbank, 5 p.m. show. My co-host Joseph Scrimshaw is a great performer. Mike Black from the Comedy Store, who's a longtime Star Wars fan and toy expert. Jackie Cation, who's a great comic and a nerd at heart, and Josh Snyder, who's a Star Trek guy, but it's his series and it's his show, and he's let me kind of book it that night. So we're going to come on out, do some Star Wars comedy. I got a lot of jokes in my act that have always been about Star Wars, but we're going to do some fun things, maybe even some toy giveaways. So come on out if you're local.
Heck yeah. I want to go.
You guys totally should. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going. You guys should come
Nice.
here.
All right. Well, thanks for taking your time to speak with us today and educate us about the darker sides of Star Wars. And I'm really excited to rewatch things with that in mind and your words. So appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you guys, you all having me. A lot of fun, and you've inspired me, Peter, to get better at Indiana Jones and the Golden Circle video game, which is Taft will tell you I'm not very good at. So
Is that the newest one?
yeah.
Yeah, we were playing
shit,
it the other
dude,
night.
those-
To be fair, you're on Sony versus Xbox, so you had some struggles.
And it's a first-person game, and I can't.
He's terrible at first.
Did you play the Emperor's Tomb?
I did not. No.
Oh, that was fantastic. That I was obsessed with it. Highly recommend if you're able to access that. That was like 2003-ish. Yeah, great Indiana Jones game.
Y'all are adorable. I love it. Thank you
on,
very
right
much,
on.
Ken,
Yeah,
for
thank
making
you.
some time.
Yeah, thank you, Ken.
Awesome.
Thanks so much to Ken Napzok for chatting Star Wars with us. Hopefully everyone learned a little bit something that's outside of the norm when it comes to the horrors and like the deep lore of Star Wars. And yeah, thank you.
I mean, I definitely did. I actually have been thinking about that conversation since we recorded yesterday. I've been thinking about it all night. I even went back and looked at a few things, and I was like, yeah, man, this is.
Yeah, he definitely has a really interesting perspective on Star Wars. Like things, I mean, it's been a while since I've watched that stuff, but you could tell how much thought he puts into what it's really saying in like a meaningful, humanistic way.
Yeah. He's smart. He's Star Wars smart.
Yeah, and everybody always talks about how, like Star Trek is the one for intellectuals and Star Wars is the one for like, I don't know, fun or whatever. But like, he really he makes a good case for Star Wars being far more intellectual than people give it credit for,
It's just him.
Well, were you guys Star Trek fans?
I liked them both personally.
You did.
I just know the one movie where they went to save the whales, and it was only because there was a flying whale. And then the one with the con one with the earwig. So those are the only two I remember, and I don't know anything else about Star Trek.
You've never seen the show?
No.
Oh, wow.
Any of the shows? There's been like
No.
5 or 6 of them.
No. I've never watched Doctor Who either.
I actually don't really like the new Star Trek. I might get some haters for that, but I think all the new Star Trek it's like they all feel very un-Star Trek-y to me. It's like the Marvelification of Star Trek, and I just wasn't into them.
Star Trek, like as a kid, it just seemed boring to me. It was like a bunch of weird-looking people in their suits on a ship, and I'm like, what? Where's the fun?
Yeah, there's not like an action show, like it's very much like when there's any kind of action, it's like, huh, here's the razor. It's
Right.
We're pissing off people left and right today. I love it.
But what it's cool about it is it was always kind of like a way to talk about, particularly in the 70s when it came out or whatever. Was it 70s?
I think so.
Yeah, but it was like a way that they could talk about sort of like social issues in
Very
the country.
progressive show.
Yeah.
It was like the first interracial kiss on TV. Is that right? Yeah. So
Rua and Captain Kirk. I do know that because I've interviewed them, so I do know that, but I've never seen the shows.
and I think they were all vegetarians too. I think that was part of it. Like I think there was a
They
lot
never
of
talk about that, but now that you mention it, like I don't know if I've
I
seen.
mean, what did they eat? They were just on a ship. They didn't actually hunt anything. I never saw.
Well, they
them
had
hunting stuff.
replicators that could replicate any kind of. You need to watch more Star Trek. That's like basic. That's basic.
I feel like it is basic.
I mean, maybe as an
Sorry.
adult, it would appeal to me a bit more. But
Yeah, I get why people find it boring. I actually tried to rewatch. I'm gonna get haters for this too. I loved The Next Generation when I was younger and was out the '90s, and I went back and tried to rewatch it when they dropped it on Netflix, like I don't know, 7-8 years ago, and I was like, is this just the first season boring, or is all of it boring? You know? And then I was like, yeah, okay, it's not quite as good as I remember it, but yeah, so great. Well, thanks for chatting. Are you guys gonna do anything cool this weekend or week?
This coming week is Comic-Con Revolution in Ontario, so I'm gonna go check that out. That's this weekend.
But they really have a Comic-Con everywhere, don't they?
They do, and for me, like, there's artists out here like I've never met, and I'm really excited to meet Chris Claremont, who's one of like the biggest like X-Men creators and writers, and just in comics in general. And I've never met him. And I think he's maybe been to Texas once or twice. He doesn't get down there anyway, so I'm really stoked to go.
That's by
meet him.
design, I'm sure. Because
Yeah, for sure. You don't avoid Texas on accident. But yeah, so I'm gonna go check out Comic-Con Revolution, and then yeah, that's about it.
right on, Peter.
I'm going back east.
Right, that's right. When do you leave? What day?
Thursday.
Okay,
I'll be gone
days
for a
from now.
week.
right on. Well, say hi to Stephen King.
I think he lives in Florida now.
Just like every other old person.
I'm gonna say that's our destiny. Even if you are progressive, it's to go to Florida.
No, it's like that's where the like East Coast old people
East Coast,
and conservative old people go, and then the like more liberal and West Coast old people are,
We stay here.
we stay here, Southern California,
LA.
but we'll probably just end up in like Orange County or like, the Inland Empire or something like that.
Yeah, it's too hot. It's too hot over here.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
We want to give a big shout out to Ken Napzok for coming on the show and educating us about the horrors of Star Wars. If you want to check out today's show notes, go to our website at nightmarelogic.net or follow us on Instagram at nightmarelogicpod. We want to give a big shout out to our composer, Lars Lang Peterson, for our awesome score. Check in next week where we're going to have another engaging conversation about horror genre and other independent filmmaking topics. Thank you.